And now, here on AMTV on Christmas Eve, time for a festive edition of our podcast, AMTV Radio. The following programme is rated 15 due to strong language and sensitive topics. Hello everybody and welcome back to AMTV Radio, the podcast where I'm joined by a special guest each time and we just talk about whatever we want, quite frankly. And this time, for a festive special, I'm joined by Will from Maddox Productions. So Will, how are you, man?
I am very well, thank you very much, Mr. Adam. Mr. Adam Martyn.
No one's ever called me Mr. Adam, but I kind of like it. So.
This will be my new pet name for you. You are my, as of recording this, my second collaborator.
Oh really? Because I think I followed you on Twitter some time ago, and like, first of all, guys, if you don't follow Will on Twitter, please go and do that. Like, the stuff you come out with most of the time is hilarious.
Yeah, shall I whore out my contacts and stuff?
Do it, man. Whore away. Whore everything you want.
My Twitter is at your boy Maddox. I'm quite informal there and memey. And my YouTube is Maddox Productions 1, where I'm a lot more dignified and professional. So there we are.
No, I like it. In a way, I wish when I'd started Twitter years ago, I almost wish I'd have done that. You know, like, sort of have one outlet that's just for memes and, like, quote-unquote edginess, and then, like, one outlet to be professional. And I guess at the time I thought, I've got to be professional across everything, which in hindsight I'm like, that's a bit, you know, it's fine, but it's a bit boring. So
yeah, that's true.
No, I love your Twitter, man. One thing I did want to ask is, like, when you started, like, you know, Twitter and stuff, did you always have the intention of it being, like, have, like, a meme-y focus, or is that something you just sort of fell into?
Yeah, it grew into that, because at first I had my channel, and I was making animations and stuff, and then a friend of mine convinced me to make a Twitter as well, and at the time, it was, a lot of people do this, like, they set up a Twitter account and then have no idea what to do with it, and leave it for, like, a couple of years, and then come back later on to then find a purpose with it. That's sort of what happened with mine. It was, like, it started out as a professional type thing that was going to promote the videos on my channel. Then I kind of fell out of that, and then I kind of just came to Twitter properly and used that account. That account basically shifted from its original purpose to what it is now.
As I say, though, I love it. Like, some of the, like, memes you come out with, like, you take moments from Doctor Who that, like, when I watch it at the time, I'm like, oh yeah, that's quite funny, or that'd make a good meme, and then, you know, you just sort of forget about, and then when I see you share them, I'm like, yeah, of course, this is an obvious idea for a meme. So, like, is that when you're watching Doctor Who, you get ideas for memes, or do they literally just pop in your head, like, as and when?
It's, like, all over the place. Sometimes when I'm in the middle of watching an episode and I'm like, oh yeah, that bit's funny, or, like, I'm watching it with my boyfriend, and then he points out to me, he's like, you could edit that to be, like, something or something. Or, like, sometimes I'm just sitting around and I just remember a moment and I'm like, oh yes, that. Let's manipulate that to be something else.
Yeah, because Doctor Who has several moments like that, really. Like the one you shared the other day, the Dalek duplicate in the chase, you know, oh, perfect. Exact copy of the original. I mean, for anyone who hasn't watched The Chase, when you watch that scene, it is hard not to laugh, isn't it? Because they're saying, like, oh, it's a perfect copy, and bless the guy they've got, but he's not William Hartnell, is he? Not really. Not really.
But he is impossible to distinguish from the original.
I'll keep telling myself that for many more years to come. But no, it's just great. And I mean, for anyone who doesn't know your Twitter, I think it's fair to say you like Patrick Troughton's Doctor
I love
quite a bit.
Patrick
Is that
Troughton's
fair to
Doctor.
say?
My area of Doctor Who, like, I dare say I'm quite controversial for my preferences in Doctor Who, because I am a huge fan of 60s and 70s Who, and I do really like the Rusty Davies stuff as well. I'm kind of... I can enjoy the 80s, it's fine, it's not like my preferred thing, but, you know, it's campy and corny, I can sit down with it, whatever. And I am quite infamously outspoken for not being a fan of the Stephen Moffat era, and I'm kind of lukewarm on Chibnall at the moment, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, I guess for anyone who doesn't know then, because I mean, I've seen like what you've written on Twitter, so I've got a fair idea of it. But just for anyone listening who's going, "What? He doesn't like Stephen Moffat?" Blah, blah, blah. What is it about the Moffat era then that just doesn't click with you?
Like I do have genuine like issues with particular story elements. Like I do think, oh, this story is a bit naff, isn't it? I think this plot point is a bit rubbish, isn't it? But like to broad strokes paint the fence faster. So to summarize it, his style of the show just isn't really my thing. Like I'm gonna sound like a really basic bitch, but I do prefer my Doctor Who more. Like I do appreciate that it's like an evolving journey type thing, but I still do kind of like that it's anthology isn't the right word, but I do quite like that, standalone adventure, and
would serialized be a better word?
Yeah, and I don't mind like them leading into each other, or like even like a very tenuous series arc, something like the Saxon stuff in series 3, and I don't even mind series 5's arc that much, but it gets to a point where with the Moffat era, his vision is so interwoven and complex and spans many seasons, and it's so focused on. It becomes less focused on like, let's explore the universe and time and space. It becomes more focused on, this is a thesis about the morality of the Doctor. Let's explore that. He's not all that good, completely. Is he? He's actually quite like it just gets it gets quite self-indulgent and tedious for me to follow.
Yeah, it's interesting because with Moffat, like myself, I sort of agree with you to an extent. Like, I rewatched a lot of the Moffat era during the first lockdown, and I don't know what it is about Matt Smith's time. Like, I love Matt Smith, great actor, all that sort of stuff, but a lot of that era now just feels a bit dated, which is weird to say because the RTD stuff, I think, for the most part, holds up quite well. Just not. I don't mean like in terms of effects and all that sort of stuff. I mean in like story, pacing, etc. But as soon as we get to Capaldi, I'm all for it. I love it. I love Capaldi's era. It's like a massive 180 for me.
That's fair enough. And I do get what you mean, because I guess with the early 2010 stuff, it's very... There's many other elements, but it's very, like, go to horny jail kind of thing. It's very sexual and very overtly flashy, like entertainment was at the time. It's not quite as refined. It's quite unabashedly raunchy in a way, and that hasn't particularly aged very well. But I guess some people would say, well, the Russell T Davies era is like that as well, but I don't know, it's more Russell's more in line with what I like about the show, so
I just think Stephen Moffat used the word sexy way too much.
Oh yeah, I made a compilation of that. I made a compilation of all the times Moffat said sexy in his era.
Oh man, it's just like, once or twice is fine. You're like, oh, like it's not it's not a dirty word. We can say it and all that sort of stuff. But it got to the point where I'm like, are you just writing that because of the word it is? Do you know what I mean? It's like, are you just throwing this in there to be like, look, we can appeal to horny teenagers across the country, etc. All that sort of stuff.
Although I was very surprised to find out, because I'm in the middle of another Doctor Who marathon from the very beginning, I was very surprised to find out that the earliest instance of the word sexy is in the Gunfighters, so the first Doctor era.
Is it really?
Yeah. The Doctor didn't say it, it's just a random side... It's the side character Doc Holliday, who's talking about his spouse or whatever, and he's just like... I can't remember exactly what he says, but he calls her sexy in a really bad American accent. So.
I mean, the Gunfighters' American accent, they're bad, but I think they're charmingly bad. Like, I can't hate them because I'm like, it's BBC in the 60s trying to do a Western. Of course it's going to be cheap. Of course it's going to be tacky in all departments,
And that's why we love it.
Yeah. No, but I mean, as you say, you're on this marathon, and I think, at the time of this recording, you've just finished the first Troughton season.
Yeah, I'm at the end of season 4. I have next got Tomb of the Cybermen to watch, which is one of my favourites of all time, if not my favourite, purely because I'm just a Troughton whore. Like, I will admit that story is not perfect. It is. There are like some illogical fallacies about it, and some other like unfortunate of the time depictions. But I still just love the iconography of it, and Troughton himself is. I can't think of like what's the most perfect word to describe.
He's divine. He's divine.
He's talented, beautiful, amazing, spectacular.
All the positives. I think it's a great jumping on point because my ex-partner at the time, she'd never seen any classic Who at all. And I said, oh, would you be up for watching some? She said yes. And I was like, right, well, where the hell am I going to start? And I picked him with the Cybermen, and she really enjoyed it. So it holds up quite well, to be honest. But as you say, you're admittedly a Troughton whore. No shame in that. I respect that. I respect that a lot. But even being the Troughton whore, there must be a story that you would consider your least favourite Troughton story.
The Space Pirates.
There was even no hesitation in that whatsoever.
And it's the only one I can definitely comfortably say, okay, that sucks.
Like, that's the one you'll concede. Like, out of all the Troughton era, it's like, if you're going to have to pick one. It's hard, I think, isn't it? Because I haven't listened to the full audio of the Space Pirates myself. I've only seen the surviving episode. And part of me wonders, do you think if they ever found it, will it be like an Enemy of the World situation where everyone goes from being like, oh, this is actually quite dull, to being like, oh my god, this is a masterpiece? Or do you think the Space Pirates will forever be terrible?
I would want to say it would improve if we could watch it, but honestly, I don't think it would, because even the surviving episode 2 bores me.
It bores you, a Troughton episode, man. That's
because a lot of a common, even though the Troughton era is beloved and fondly looked back on, a common criticism of it is that it's quite formulaic and repetitive, which I honestly disagree with quite a lot. I think a lot of his stories try something new, and okay, even if they are kind of tropey, I think they have elements in them that make them exciting and unique from each other, like whether it's in terms of the characters or the plot occurrences, or even like aesthetically. But the Space Pirates is one of the few that does live up to that extremely generic tropey, okay, just running around corridors, oh no, look out kind of thing.
It's just mad, isn't it? Because like it has that reputation, and it's the second to last story of the Troughton era, and you're like, oh yeah, the production team's running out of steam, the actors are getting fed up. But then you have the War Games, which in my opinion is brilliant.
Yeah.
So it's a really weird, like, you'd think it'd be the other way round.
Yeah, it's apparently because they were putting so many resources into the War Games to make that the satisfying concluding epic that it turned out to be. So I guess sacrificing the penultimate story's quality was worth it in the end. But it's still a significant dud in that otherwise really great era.
Well, there's one Troughton story that I rewatched recently, and now I try and go with the opinion when I watch all Who now. I try and be like, can I see a positive in any story? Do you know what I mean? I don't like to be overly like negative, but there was one story where I just couldn't bring myself to do it, and that was the Dominators.
Honestly, same.
I watched it and I was like, I get what they're trying to do, like concepts and stuff. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, but it's just dull. Like, it's so dull.
It is definitely my least favorite Troughton that isn't the Space Pirates.
So second least favorites.
Yeah. But I can't really comfortably say that I dislike it, but it is definitely like the second least. Like, if they were all gonna be like destroyed, to like if for some reason the junkings of the 60s were still going on and someone's like, right, we're gonna junk an existing Troughton story to select one, the Dominators would be the one that I wouldn't be. I would be too upset.
You'd be alone. It's just mad, isn't it? Because season 6, like, you've got like the Space Pirates and the Dominators, but then you've got like the War Games and the Mind Robber and the Invasion, and you just think like, what was going on? Like, what was happening?
I don't even think the Crotons is that bad. I think the Crotons is that story gets a bit too much flack, honestly.
I'd agree with you. I think it's in a way, I felt it like has some of the similar trappings that the Dominators did have, but it executed them a lot better than the Dominators did.
Yeah,
it was much more enjoyable, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot pacier and fun, and although the Dominators has its fun moments, particularly with Tu and Jamie bromance, which I'm oh so fond of, but
I know you've been shipping that a lot recently, and to be honest, it's in nearly every story. Like, Jamie's like latched onto him and all that sort of stuff.
It's hard to tell if I'm being ironic or unironic about shipping them sometimes.
You can overanalyze that scene in Tomb of the Cybermen. You know, when they first go in the control room and they hold hands and then like shake each other off.
Yeah,
you could analyze that scene, being like, "Oh, what's going on here?" You know, so
it's great. But in terms of Troughton, season 5 is my favourite season of his. And I'm so glad that I've got that next because, it's yummy.
It's very yummy. And I mean, so good that, I mean, you know, we've had Enemy of the World and Web of Fear for the most part come back. We've had Fury from the Deep animated and stuff. So it's really only The Wheel in Space left. Oh, no, and The Abominable Snowman, I guess, to animate, isn't it? They're the only two.
I do love Tomb. Tomb's one of my favourites. Enemy, Web, and Fury are probably my vote for the best trilogy of stories in all of Doctor Who. I just love those three.
Nice, yeah.
And I really like the Ice Warriors as well. I also like the story and the species. Like, I think the Ice Warriors are a really underrated villain. I prefer them to the Sontarans, honestly. That's
that's interesting. Yeah. Who are, of course, coming back in the next season because there seems to be someone, I'm guessing, camping out wherever they're filming Series 13, because we're getting a lot of leaks.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did think about that yesterday, because like some new footage of filming got leaked. It was like 13 and Yaz coming out of the TARDIS. And, oh, pardon me, burped. And when I saw that, I was just kind of thinking, yeah, but what happened to the person filming? Like, what's happened to them? Have they... Is it a kind of thing where, like, if you're watching this, I am dead kind of thing?
Chibnall's got him. He's found him. He's locked him up. Nah, it's just interesting, isn't it? Because obviously Chibnall's been accused of being like really secretive during his tenure, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, look at this bit of Series 13 filming. Oh, look at this. Look at that. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, where is all this coming from, and why aren't the BBC going to greater efforts to stop it?
Maybe he thinks social distancing is still working, and so he's like, well, no one will see this.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, diverting to the new series for a moment, are you excited for the New Year's special?
Relatively. Like, I'm not overjoyed about it, but it seems to have an interesting conceit to it.
Captain and that
Jack
new Dalek design, what we thinking?
I don't like the head, but the rest of it looks fine. Like, the dome has really weird proportions, and it looks weird, but the rest of the body, it looks stylish and different. I can dig it. And it looks better in motion.
I think it looks... I know it's based off of the reconnaissance design, but I think it looks better than that one we saw in Resolution. Or just, I don't know, it looks a bit less weird proportions, like you say, apart from the dome, but... Yeah, the whole black and silver design's really wavy, I think. And as you say, Captain Jack's coming back, so hopefully it'll just be a damn good episode. That's all we really want, isn't it? Just need it to be good.
And I do think a Dalek redesign has been overdue, because I do like the gold Ross T. Davies ones, and Moffat's kind of failed attempt at doing the paradigm, but I do think 15... Is it over 15 years of this same Dalek design?
Yeah, about 15.
I think it's time to have a bit of a aesthetic revamp of them a bit.
Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? Because I mean, with those bronze ones, because I guess they were like the staple design for when the show came back. Like for our generation, growing up with the new series, I guess a lot of people are firmly attached to that and won't accept anything else. Like the whole paradigm situation. And the paradigm, it had its flaws. Like, what was the thing at the back that was meant to be like additional weapons that never got used, or whatever it was?
Yeah, and they're quite chonky and...
very chonky.
And the, I don't mind their structure, but, the very vibrant, orange and yellow and... Yeah,
just not... you'd look at them and think, maybe not bright yellow, like Crayola crayon yellow, maybe not.
We didn't get a pink one. Where's the pink?
No, I know we didn't get a pink one. Has there ever been a pink Dalek in like any media whatsoever?
Maybe there wasn't like some half forgotten Hartnell era annual comic or something. But
Oh, I love delving into that like weird one-off media. But one thing I do want to ask you, and it's something I'm going to also be incorporating into the new season of the podcast to guests who are into Doctor Who. I myself put on Twitter not controversial opinions, just opinions where I think, you know, I'm in sort of the niche, if you like, not the popular opinion. So I want to ask you, as my guest, what story in any of Doctor Who, you know, any area you like, what story that you think isn't well loved by the public would you watch any day over a story that is considered very popular, if that makes sense?
I would happily watch Frontier in Space any day over The Deadly Assassin.
Ooh, that's spicy, definitely. Ooh.
Yeah. Frontier in Space is so underrated. Like, people just write it off as, oh, Prison Simulator 1973 edition. They're just in a prison cell over and over again. Just more prison cells. Like, excuse you. All that juicy character drama that goes down in them, it's so endearing. Like, 3 and Joe are so cute and banterous in it, and then the Master comes in and the banter just increases, and I love it. And I like the Draconian War as well. And Deadly Assassin, meanwhile, I don't... The Master's honestly kind of boring in it. And and Gallifrey is kind of dull. And, I mean, Tom Baker's good, but, you know, Tom Baker's pretty much always good. But, you know, it's just... Yeah, that's my hot take there.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's interesting, yeah, because I mean, the Deadly Assassin's always lauded so much, isn't it, for like the whole Gallifrey lore? But I love Frontier in Space as well. I mean, you might have seen it on Twitter. I'm firmly of their opinion that there is no bad Pertwee story.
That's valid.
On TV, yeah, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, that's valid. There are a couple that I think aren't that great, but there's none that I would comfortably say, okay, that sucked. Like,
no, that's fair. What are the not great ones then? Let's hear them. So...
Claws of Axos, I think that one is...
Oh, man, that hurts.
I think that one's just kind of generic and, like, it's... Because, oh no, these aliens are claiming to be peaceful and are offering a gift. Surely they won't be evil. And they're evil. Oh, and it also ends with that, like, stupid, oh no, the Doctor has sided with the villains thing. Has he? Of course he hasn't.
And yet they all believe him, like, straight away when he's like, oh yes, you will bow down to the Master. And they're like, what?
For heaven's sake, Joe.
Yeah. I mean, when you put it like that, I can see why. I can see your points there. Fair enough.
Yeah. The Daemons, it's still okay. It's still a decent one. It's just, it's, like, weird fan favourite status I don't entirely get. And, like, okay, this is just kind of a decent enough outing, but not, like, amazing.
I'd agree with you there. I'd say that the Demons is definitely overrated, in my opinion. I don't think it's this, you know, pantheon of what people make it out to be. But it's enjoyable enough. And there's that really weird line where Pertwee's like, despite being anti-authority, you know, sort of bemoans Joe for not respecting the Brigadiers. He's your superior officer, Joe. It's just a very weird, out-of-character line, I think.
That and the Brigadier's locked out of the plot until, like, the last 10 minutes, and it's like, aw. But then, where's all the juicy Brigadier action, though?
Well, that's it. I mean, everyone's like, oh yeah, the Demons is, like, the pinnacle of the unit family. I'm like, hello, the Brigadier's, like, stuck outside a bubble for, like, 90% of the story.
And there's there's not much Doctor Master interaction either, so that's not really fueling much.
No.
So, yeah, it's kind of a shame.
And also, why are Benton and Yates, like, the worst, like, unit soldiers ever? Oh, yeah, we've got this really expensive, like, private helicopter. Oh, I know. I'll land it in the middle of the village green. Like, do you know what I mean? I watched it recently, and I was like, why would you... Like, why? Like, I know they'll say, oh, it was the only place they had enough space or whatever, but I don't know. I just saw it, and then obviously someone does steal it, and I'm like, well, what the hell did you expect? I don't know.
And then the other one is... Monster of Peladon, and it's just because it's Curse of Peladon again. Really, it's a bit redundant, but it still has Liz Sladen in it, and she's great. And Alpha Centauri is adorable, and Ice Warriors. I love Ice Warriors, so it's still fine.
Yeah, I think Monster. Yeah, Curse is definitely better. I think Monster could have been 4 parts instead of 6. But I don't know. I like the whole how it delves a little bit more into like the whole politics side of it. I know some people don't like politics in their Doctor. I mean, there's a whole side of the Doctor Who fan base that likes to talk about politics, but we won't talk about them just yet. So yeah. Oh, we'll get to that maybe a bit later. But I don't know. I like it sometimes when Who dedicates a story to. They're like, you know what, we will talk about politics for a little bit. Do you know what I mean? It's like not every story, but like here and there, I don't mind delving into the old, like, workers are treated like shit, you need to do better storyline. But no, that's fair enough. What's your thoughts on season 7, which is my contender for my favourite series of Doctor Who ever, the first Pertwee one?
It is delicious. It is immaculate.
Oh, it's so delicious, yes.
Inferno, my second favourite Pertwee story, behind Frontier in Space.
Nice.
Spearhead from Space, a phenomenal introduction to Pertwee, to Liz Shaw, to the unit formula properly, because obviously it was in the Invasion, but, it's a great sort of emphasis of, right, this is here to stay, and, the Autons are great. And Ambassadors of Death is, like, really cool and well-directed and just stylish as well, and Doctor Who and the Silurians is pretty decent too. It's probably my least favourite of the season, but it's still pretty good, so...
The only thing I don't like about the Silurians is the music score.
Oh god, yeah, the kazoo or whatever instrument.
Oh, it's just like when the Silurians creeping up and the sound is literally do you know what I mean? Like the ugliest synth in the world. And like, yeah, it's just, but it's Carrie Blyton, isn't it, who did the Revenge of the Cybermen score, which again isn't fantastic. And
yeah,
I think he did the Sea Devils, didn't he? Which again isn't. The score is not arguably, fair play to Carrie Blyton, not trying to knock his work, but it's not for me. It's just not. Yeah.
Pertwee arguably has the worst scores of. Oh wait, no. Okay, well, it's either that or Colin Baker. Like, it's
again, yeah, Colin Baker, like Return of the Ugly Synth, isn't it? For a lot of the Baker stories, just like a really, like, the one that always sticks out. I can't imitate the sound of this one, but in the Twin Dilemma when he's like strangling Perry.
Oh yeah, that weird just thudding on the. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, it's the ugliest like synthesized sound in existence, and it's hideous. It's like the score of Resurrection of the Daleks, which is, in some respects, I think a decent score, but it has some of that ugly sound. It's like that ramped up to 10, and it's just, it's just ick. But on the Twin Dilemma, that would be my story for like the question I ask you. I would rather watch Twin Dilemma than City of Death.
Boy,
I know. No, right. In my defense, City of Death is not a bad story. I would not say it's bad. The shots in Paris are cool. Tom Baker's cool. But I don't get the fan favourite hype. It's just a decent story. It's not mind-blowing, in my opinion, of course. Like, I'm not trying to pass that on to anyone, because there'll be someone in the comments, oh, you're projecting it. No, it's just my opinion. Leave me alone.
That, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't click. I think what spoiled it a bit for me was before I watched it, because, it has that reputation of being, like, one of the best Baker stories ever. I think that sort of, like, went into my mind, and then when I watched it and I didn't think that, I was a bit like, oh, this was a bit disappointing. But it's not a bad story.
That's fair enough, yeah. I do have a couple of episodes, more in the new series that like that have that, this is so phenomenal, like, earth-shatteringly good, your, like, brain will fall out of your ears kind of reputation, and then when I watch it, I'm like, this kind of sucks.
Yeah, like, for me, that's Blink.
That's fair enough. For me, that's...
Like, it's... Sorry, go on.
You go first.
Oh, no, I was just who's gonna get mobbed first. So.
Oh, for Blink.
Like, Blink is, it again, like, decent concept. I like the story. I like that it's Dr. Light, all that sort of stuff. But it's just, in my view, it's not as good as everyone makes it out to be. It really isn't. That's the be-all, end-all of it, really. It's just, yeah.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
An episode where I'm like that is... Oh wait, no, I can't really. It's less that I think it's a decent episode. It's more that everyone says it's an amazing episode, and I'm just like, no, this is actually kind of crap. It's Fugitive of the Jadoon.
You know what? I've seen a lot of people say that recently. You know, how it was mainly just people love it for, like, the shock value of the two big reveals rather than, like, the actual plot.
It's such a mess. It's so, like Captain Jack turns up and is like, hey, stick around for 11 months and I'll be back. Bye. And that's like a third of the plot to tell us to stick. Oh no, that's bad. And then, like, maybe am I just like a spoiled basic bitch for just wanting a simple Jadoon story?
No. I mean, in that defense, like, I did enjoy Fugitive, but, like, the one thing I was disappointed at was that it sort of undermines the Jadoon in a story that's named after them. Like,
it just ditches them for, like, half the runtime.
You call it Fugitive of the Jadoon, I expect Jadoon. Not, like, if the focus was going to be mainly on the Ruth Doctor, for example, but then the Jadoon around it, just call it, like, the Fugitive or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it didn't need... That's like if you called it, like, something of the Daleks, but the Daleks only appear for, like, 5 minutes and the rest of the plot isn't connected to them whatsoever.
Yeah, I get that. And also, like, everyone just simping over the Fugitive Doctor, and I don't really get her appeal. Like, it's great that she's the first person of colour Doctor. That's great. But she's been on screen for, like, 5 minutes, and I didn't really get much from her other than she's just kind of snarky. And as in terms of being, like, another secret incarnation of the Doctor who, like, slots into the past that we didn't know, it's like, well, been there, done that, you know, the War Doctor, so big deal.
Yeah. Well, that's what I didn't get, like, a lot of the criticism at the time. It's like, why are you complaining about a secret Doctor? Like, this literally happened 7 years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's not that long ago. Like, have we all just forgotten? But I like Jo Martin as an actor. I think she's brilliant. I think my take was the short time she's had this series, I thought she's used it well. As you say, we haven't really had much character development because they haven't given her the time. I'd just be more curious to see what she does next if she pops back in Series 13. But I think a lot of people who are simping her, like, I noticed from just people you see pop up on Twitter from time to time, some people were those people who just, like, can't stand Jodie. So I think, you know, this other person, they're going hard on, like, the opposite to make up for that. That's my theory, anyway.
I can see that. And it's like some people hope she'll be the 14th Doctor, and I'm so mixed on that because, like, on one hand, fine, it'll be cool that she gets to be the actual Doctor eventually. But then, like, why didn't you just introduce her conventionally? Why did you introduce her, like, halfway through her predecessor's era and, like, steal Jodie's thunder? Like, that's weird.
Yeah. No,
I think the implication is that she is a past Doctor, though, so...
Yeah, there's a corner of the fandom going, 6B, you know. Really,
I hope not, really. Please. I like to pretend season 6B isn't a thing.
I thought you'd want it to be. It's the whole, you know, between Troughton and Pertwee. I thought you'd want more Troughton action.
But not season 6B. No, it invalidates the War Games.
No. But then, what's your view on, like, the two Doctors then when the Time Lords pull 2 and Jamie out?
I honestly don't really care much for the two Doctors. Like, it's great that Troughton's back. It's great that he had, like, one last go at the role, and, you know, Fraser Hines has great chemistry with Colin Baker. But it's just, as a story, it's and then they get Troughton to, like, wear those ginger eyebrows and, like, he's an androgram and like, why? And both cliffhangers are, like, kind of dodgy because both of them have Perry get assaulted and they look...
Yeah, when you think about it, Perry got, like, the worst lot out of, like, any companion ever, I think, in terms of what she had to suffer. Like, I watched Time Lash the other day and she literally spends about 80% of that story, like, chained up, being assaulted, being like the Lear of the Borad and all that. Do you know what I mean? It's sad in a way, because I think Nicola Bryant's so good, and she's just there as like an object.
Yeah, and the biggest plot point of that story is the villain wants to disfigure her and force her into marriage with it.
Yes, because that works every time. Oh, do you know what? Yeah. I went into it hoping it would be like a Twin Dilemma situation for me, because I actually enjoy the Twin Dilemma a fair amount, more than most, I think. So I was hoping Time Lash would be a similar thing when I rewatched it, and it just wasn't. It's like the Dominators of the Colin Baker era for me. It's just dull. It's just, you know what I mean? It's like the plot's all over the place. Like you say, the whole thing about transforming Perry's contrived as anything. The Bandrels are hilarious. You know, the little snake things that appear on the visual screen. And why? Like, considering the puppet was already so bad, why did they have to give them that high-pitched voice like this? Like, why would you undermine them anymore? Like, it's just... Oh.
We are at war. Do not antagonize us any further.
It would have been better if it was even just a voice. Like, have that voice, but no image. But it's just the fact it's very clearly, like, a sock puppet.
Yeah, the very sad-looking sock puppets.
Exactly, and, like, but Colin... I mean, like... Because obviously people complain about, you know, the whole Colin Baker and... Sixth Doctor and Perry, you know, the first half of their dynamic is them screaming at each other in the TARDIS. And I actually like the two Doctors in the respect that it develops that a little bit more, you know, away from that. There's less of that. And then Time Lash just goes straight back to it. Like, the first 10 minutes. And like, you know, at the end when he's, like, planning to, like, self-sacrifice himself and he literally... like screams at Perry to get out and is just being an arsehole in general.
Yeah, that's a very interesting chapter of the show, the Colin Baker era.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for anyone listening, if you want good Perry stories, just go to Big Finish. Like, there's some great Perry stories there that give her justice.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Because Colin Baker era, it's like... It's an era that I've only just recently... Like, I've always considered it kind of just a hot mess, but it's only really recently where I've made, like, my Sixth Doctor worst to best list, where I realised, okay, this era is actually kind of bad, isn't it?
Well, it's funny you say that. Like, I've toyed with this idea for about 2 years now, and I think in the new year, when I've got some more time, I'm going to do it. I would argue Revelation of the Daleks is a contender for... best classic Who story ever.
Interesting, because I don't like it.
So you'll be watching it going, no.
Well, we'll see when I get to it in my marathon again. Because I like Resurrection of the Daleks. Mostly because it was my first ever classic Who story.
That's fair.
So I have a fondness for that one, and Revelation is kind of its sister story in a way, because it's the same writer doing Daleks, and it's also grim and stuff, but, you know, it's something about it's like a lot of the acting and like the fact that the Doctor's barely involved in the plot, it doesn't really click with me that much. Like, he spends all of episode 1 walking to the plot. It's... And then gets crushed by a statue of himself, and that's the cliffhanger.
Oh, a very obvious, like, polystyrene statue as well that crumbles. I love in, like, the part 1 cliffhanger, you can, like, before it tumbles on him, you can actively see the crack in the statue. Like, they didn't even try. It's like in the Two Doctors, though, you know, Troughton's back. Oh, should we dye his hair or his wig black? Nah, just leave it as grey.
Yeah, and let's not even bother, like, trying to set it at a point in his life that makes sense. Let's just say, yeah, the Time Lords are sending him on a mission, which totally doesn't work with anything in his era. Oh, this.
Yeah, and Victoria wants to study graphology. Remember? Just like in the 60s. Remember?
What the hell?
It's like, that was Robert Holmes, though, wasn't it? Which surprised me, because obviously, like, he wrote for so many Doctors, including Troughton, of course, with the Crotons and the Space Pirates, everyone's favourite. But you just think, you know, because he wrote it for so long, you would have thought he would have, I'm not saying not done his research, because I'm sure he did, but do you know what I mean? Like, just,
Yeah.
as you say, like, make something up that just makes a bit more sense.
Like, maybe they were just misremembering, because I think, like, VHS tapes and, like, stuff were a lot more sparse back then, so maybe they couldn't really, like, look back on the old stories as readily, but still, it's like, no.
Yeah, but it's like, obviously, I think people have said it. The obvious one would have been, if they're going to do Victoria, set it just after Fury from the Deep and before Wheel in Space. Write a quick line about Jamie being like, oh, why I'm gutted we left Victoria, and Troughton's like, yeah, get over it. You're in the... Do you know what I mean? That would have been like...
Yeah.
As
a kid, I thought that was where the story was set, but then as I grew up, I came to understand that Season 6B was a thing, and I was like, oh no, please,
and
no.
You watch Fury from the Deep, and you're like, wait a minute, she's not leaving to study graphology?
Maybe she was, and like that's why it was so heartfelt. It wasn't because she wanted to leave for her own personal good, it's because she wanted to leave to study.
It's just the most convoluted line, what's Victoria left for? We could put anything in here. I know, graphology. Like, what? It's like, why? What? When did Victoria ever show any interest in the... Anyway, we could argue about that all day. And also, just not into bashing on the Baker era, but in Time Lash, when that character shows Perry the locket of Joe Grant, and she's like, oh yeah, that's Joe Grant. Does the Doctor just sat her down and be like, look, here are all the people I've... like a slideshow of like... Because there's no hesitation. Like, she knows straight away who it is.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Because as I'm going through my marathon, I am making... every time I reach the end of a season, I compile all the previous references, like all the references to off-screen adventures in that season. And season 22 is going to be interesting because Time Lash has so many... Oh, yes, I came here as the third Doctor in this adventure never saw.
Yeah. And I don't think it's... Big Finish haven't covered it yet, I don't think.
I don't
Well, they might have done. Or... You would have thought that would have been like the obvious the first choice. But what else is in season 22? I really like Attack of the Cybermen,
It's alright. I like it more than Revelation of the Daleks, honestly, but...
That's fair.
That's me being strange, I suppose.
No, we've all got our different opinions.
We're all strange. And I think Mark of the Rani's underrated, and Vengeance on Varos is pretty good as well, so...
I think Mark of the Rani gets a lot of that hate for the cliffhanger. Let's strap the Doctor to a trolley. We will push the trolley. It will now perfectly fall into a pit. I think they even riff it on... I think it was on like one of the DVD special features where there was like a documentary about cliffhangers. And I can't remember his name, but the show Dead Ringers?
Vaguely,
It was one of them like talking about it. And they were like, oh no, Doctor Who is going to fall down the well. Tune in next week to see if Doctor Who falls down the well. So... Well, let's talk about McCoy. Everyone's favourite.
Fair enough.
I love McCoy. Like he's behind Capaldi and Hartnell. He's my favourite Doctor, and I just love all of his era. Even season 24, I hear people cry. I just love how like at a time when the show was like the least loved by the corporation that was making it, they still were like, fuck it. We're gonna make some fun stories. We're gonna do some ambitious stories. We're gonna do some dark stories. Do you know what I mean? They just sort of were like, fuck it. We're gonna do whatever the hell we want then. So I think I admire it a lot in that respect. And the season 24 thing, a lot of people bash it. I rewatched it all recently. It's not that bad, guys. Do you know what I mean? Like, in the whole pantheon of Who, is season 24 really that bad?
I'm not a fan of it, but I will say Time and the Rani is my guilty pleasure.
Oh my god, Time and the Rani is so much fun. If you watch Time and the Rani and like say you didn't crack a smile at least once, even if it was like in an ironic, oh, this is bad way, I think you're lying. So
yeah, it's like, because a lot of season 24, it is camp and kind of cringy and not aged well, and I understand that, but I think with Time of the Rani, it's so through the roof that it's endearing.
Oh, and in what other show where you've got this an evil female villain of the Doctor's own race of Time Lords? What shall she do? Oh, I know. Let's dress up as the Doctor's companion. It's like, yes, of course. Why ever would this not work? Like,
Also, the most iconic opening lines of any story, just
oh.
leave the girl. It's the man I
the
want.
man I want. To be memed for the next 30 years and more. But yeah, it's just it's a fun story, man. It's like I can't not hate Time and the Rani. Again, I'd watch that over City of Death. Sorry, Tom Baker fans.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot I'd watch. Do you know what? We'll go back to McCoy, but I'm going to say this quickly now. I think the entire Tom Baker era is overrated. Tom Baker is a very good actor. He's a very good doctor, but there are so many of his stories that are like lauded as like the golden age of Who that I just don't view in the same way. So that's my very quick hot take on the Tom Baker era. I know.
We'll get back to that. But...
Yeah, we'll divert to that after McCoy.
Yeah.
But back to McCoy. So are there any highlights of the McCoy era? Like any stories you're like, yeah, do you know what? Even though it's the 80s and it's a bit on its last legs, you're like, yeah, that's a pretty decent story.
I, funnily enough, just made a video about this the other day in my top 10 McCoy era stories video. And a few of, like, the list starts off, like, number 10, I put Paradise Towers, and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to make the best out of an icky situation here. I'm not, like, the big fan of the story, but it's fine. But, there are a handful, like, number 4 on my list is Survival, and I really like Survival. Survival's a great end to Classic Who. The Happiness Patrol is brilliant, underrated.
Yes.
Love it.
Oh my god, I adore the Happiness Patrol so much.
Yeah, and so many people say, oh, it's so camp, Candyman, and then some people who, like, because it's an allegory for Margaret Thatcher, apparently. I've never really been able to make that connection, but, like, people who appreciated Margaret Thatcher don't like that story, and like they use that to say, well, because of my political leaning, I think the story is bad. It's like, no, try and see a different perspective.
Exactly. Like, I mean, I'm from good old Yorkshire, so Maggie Thatcher is universally disliked here, and but yeah, it's just a great story. I know everyone points to that scene, you know, the look me in the eye, pull the trigger, end my life, which is brilliant in itself. Yes, that is a brilliant scene. But I also like, you know, the ending scene when the Doctor confronts Helen A.
Yeah.
She's trying to escape.
Oh, I love that scene.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Because, like, she's losing her mind. Like, she's losing the plot. And McCoy could easily, like, match it. But he's just, like, calm. He's just like, yeah, I'm just talking. And I think that's what McCoy does so well when he's given that material. Do you know what I mean? He just, like, he sells that whole calm, like, master manipulator thing so well.
Yeah. I can see that. But yeah, Remembrance of the Daleks is also top tier. Greatest Show in the Galaxy, top tier. Curse of Fenric, I think, is a bit overrated, I have to say, but it's still good. It's still a good one. And I like Ghost...
Did you understand what... I was going to say Ghostlight. Did you understand what the fuck was going on?
Kinda, I do, but, like,
yeah.
I can't... If you ask me to recite it, I can't really. Like, it's a sort of thing I can only really get in the moment, and then... Like, if you pressure me afterwards to, like, right, explain what Ghostlight is about, I'm like,
Yeah, good question. But I've just thought, though, you did a top 10 McCoy stories, but there's only 12... Were you including, like, spin-off media or just TV stories?
It was just TV stories, and then I mentioned the others as, like, dishonorable mentions.
Yeah. Well, considering there's only 12 TV stories for 7, I have to say, which 2 stories didn't make the cut?
Dragonfire and Delta and the Bannerman.
Oh, look, it's season 24 again.
And Dimensions in Time, because...
No! Not Dimensions in Time.
Because a good friend of mine, who you may or may not know on Twitter, Jenny, who is a big advocate for Dimensions in Time, she just endlessly pressures me to, like, acknowledge Dimensions in Time as, like, canon. And I just, like, I threw that in there as, like, a last minute thing, just like, and no, Dimensions in Time wouldn't make the list, shut up, kind of thing.
Oh. No, I've seen Jenny on Twitter, big advocate for Dimensions in Time, and I mean, I did a video on it for Doctor Who Day, partly riffing it, but also partly admiring it for just what it was at that period. You know, at a time when Doctor Who on TV was dead, that they just had the balls to be like, fuck it, EastEnders crossover,
yeah,
let's fucking do it. Like, do you know, I think that's what I love about like the 80s and 90s of Doctor Who. Like, they were literally just like, fuck it. Like, we will do whatever we want.
Yeah,
So
that's fair enough.
yeah, Dragonfire I watched recently. I think the villain's good. Kane's a cool villain. I think the Society of Iceworld could have been fleshed out a bit more. Yeah, part 1 cliffhanger. We've all riffed it. It's kind of stupid, but and Delta and the Bannermen again. It's like Time of the Rani for me. It's just fun. Like, yes, it's stupid. Yes, it's set in Welsh butlins, but it's just fun.
That's fair enough. I think the problem with Dragonfire, it's something that a genius thing my boyfriend once said. Every other McCoy era story is really vivid and memorable. Like, if someone says Ghostlight, you can immediately remember what Ghostlight is about. If someone says Battlefield, you can instantly remember what Battlefield is about. And Dragonfire, meanwhile, is only memorable because it's not any of the others.
It's the one that isn't the others.
Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. I'd say, like, I don't know, if I had to pick like a least favorite McCoy story, Dragonfire would probably be there. So I don't disagree with you on that one. Yes. Or I think people just remember it as, it's the one where Ace appears for the first time. And that's about it.
It's a really low key, like, companion introduction. Like, I think everyone pretty much watches Remembrance of the Daleks before Dragonfire these days, because, you know, everyone watches Who out of order anyway, so so it's almost also, like that is her true introduction story at this point, and then Dragonfire is just that weird thing that no one really cares about.
No one gives a shit about. Also, Big Finish, if you're listening, I want my Sabalon Blitz spin-off, please. I think it would be a great box set. Tony Selby is still alive. It can be done. Please do it.
They like keep tippy-toeing around that because, like, they brought back Mel. She rejoined the 7th Doctor and Ace. Like, Glitz had dumped her, and then she just joins back with the Doctor and Ace for a bit. But Glitz himself doesn't appear, and it's just weird. Like,
I must admit, I hadn't listened. I think I'd read that somewhere. I hadn't listened to those yet, and I think before I had, I was like, oh, is this set in like a weird pocket universe, like during Dragonfire, where like they get sucked in a time warp and have adventures together? But then, yeah, you're right. Like, Glitz dumped her. It's like, oh yeah, of course he did. Because, like, why the hell would Glitz stay with Mel? Like, they didn't get on in either of the stories. So, like, not really. But I mean, if we can have a Winston Churchill spin-off, if we can have a Lady Christina, a Jenny, where's Glitz, man? Where's my Glitz spin-off?
I don't blame you for thinking like that weird alternate universe thing, because they really try. There is an audio called The Five Companions, which literally takes place during the 5 Doctors, like between scenes.
No way.
You know that bit when the 5th Doctor and the Master, like, they're being like the Cybermen have shot at them. The Doctor takes the Master's teleportation device and says, "Sorry, mustache," and teleports away. And then
oh no, don't say it. Not in between there and when he gets to Gallifrey.
Yep.
Oh my god.
He gets teleported to like an alternate death zone or something where Ian Chesterton, Stephen, Sarah Kingdom somehow, Polly and Nissa have all ended up with Daleks and Sontarans, and like a whole extension of that story takes place there with them.
Excellent. And then, and of course, it's never mentioned in the 5 Doctors because, you know.
Yeah, he gets right back to teleporting to the capital, like nothing ever happened.
Oh god. Do you know what? I mean, I love Big Finish, and I know obviously with like the classic Doctors they have to timeline it somewhere, but like sometimes, like say, they're stretching, like they really, really stretch it.
It's kind of endearing just to see how much they will try, because everyone's always mocks that bit, how they always try doing stories for the first Doctor, Ben and Polly. There is literally no room. There is no room for that, because the Smugglers ends with the Doctor being like, "We have landed in the coldest place in the world." And then the 10th planet opens with Polly saying, "Wow, the Doctor was right. This is the coldest place in the world." But then Big Finish take that and are like, but it didn't... What world? It didn't necessarily have to be They went on many adventures.
I mean, like, props for trying. Like, fair play to try and loophole it, but like, yeah, as you say, some of it they just wangle. Like, they absolutely wangle it through. Like, as you say, the whole Seven Ace and Mel thing. Like, that's just, oh yeah, now you're back. It's like, oh yeah, cool. That's just the thing now, I guess. On Big Finish, have you delved much into Big Finish? Like, you listen to a lot of the audios and stuff?
I used to be an avid Big Finish collector. I still kind of am, but it's on hold right now. Particularly after Series 9, because I was especially disappointed by Series 9 and the direction the show was taking at that point. So at that point, I was just like, fuck it, let's go to the expanded universe. And I was collecting loads of comics and Big Finish audios, and I have quite a lot. Like, behind me, I've got all the main range stuff. I know, like, you can't see because I'm just audio, but
I'm picturing it in my mind's eye.
To select audio navigation. But yeah, I've got quite a bit of the main range. I have collected quite a lot of Eighth Doctor stuff and like some spin-off stuff, and Fourth Doctor adventures, and I like them a lot. I really like their early Eighth Doctor stuff with Charlie Pollard and Lucy Miller.
Yes. Yeah.
But then as soon as it gets to like the Dark Eye saga, I tune out.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, like, I'm actually going through Dark Eyes at the minute. I've listened to the first 2 sets. I think Dark Eyes 1 is brilliant because, wasn't it, when they first made it, it was originally just meant to be like a standalone thing, like the only one. Yeah. And I think the pacing's brilliant. I really love Ruth Bradley as Molly. And I've just finished Dark Eyes 2, and whilst, like, it's nice having Alex McQueen as the Master and all that, it just feels like you can tell they made it for the sake.
Yeah, it's like, oh, let's limp on a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll listen to 3 and 4, but my expectations aren't like through the roof.
And honestly, I think Doom Coalition is a severely overrated saga. So
see, I've managed to get all of those. I got really lucky in a haul. Like, someone was selling a lot of their Big Finish CDs, and I got them for a really good price. So I've got all of Doom Coalition to listen to, and Ravenous, and then Stranded. And I've heard very mixed things about Stranded, the latest one.
Yeah, I think I've just kind of fallen out with the Eighth Doctor at this point. I'm just like, okay, his golden days are kind of behind him at this point. I'll just stick to, the wig and the velvet Eighth Doctor.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, I've only really started getting into Big Finish this year, actually, through lockdown, and I've managed to listen to quite a lot through that time. And I've gone through, because, like, the first 50 of the main range are on Spotify, so I'm working my way through them. And in the Eighth Doctor Charlie stuff, I recently finished Neverland.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm up to. So that the one before Zagreus. Now I just need to listen to all the other interlinking parts, because I've heard Zagreus is it's quite a beast.
I like Zagreus a lot. It once had the reputation of being the most divisive Doctor Who story, which is hilarious to think about now, because since then we've had Hellbent and the Timeless Children, which both completely fractured the fan base.
Oh god. Yeah, and the ripples are still being felt today. But you mentioned isn't Heaven Sent your favourite episode, right? Yeah?
Boy.
I know, like, for anyone who doesn't know, you don't really like Heaven Sent, do you? Or is that an overstatement on my part?
It's a fine episode. Like, if you ask me to say, what would you rate it out of 10, I'd say, like, a 6, maybe a 7. Like, it's fine for what it is. Its reputation of being the best, the most artistic, most profound, most, like, it's, like, just shut up and jizz all over the episode poster already. Just shut up. It's not that good.
That's fair. What is it about it for you that sort of stops it from being, like, in that absolute pinnacle 1% top tier thing? Is it anything in particular, or? It's
mostly because I guess this is subjective, as all art is, but I just don't care about Clara. I don't. And, like, Series 8 and 9 are so insistent that we should care about Clara that pretty much everything in the plot relates back to her in a sense. Because, like, the thing about, if, for instance, we talk about, like, Series 2, for instance, now, I think the 10th Doctor and Rose are quite irritating in that series, but
Yeah.
they aren't the be-all and end-all of the story, in a sense. Like, I don't particularly enjoy them, but I still enjoy the plot of The Impossible Planet, so to speak. But in Series 9, I don't really like the 12th Doctor and Clara dynamic, but But it's like, okay, well, what if I just focus on the stories? But then the story's like, but what is this hybrid? The hybrid is the Doctor and Clara. It's like this big intertwined, like, thesis that just all interlinks back to this same element. And I guess that's another element of why I'm just not crazy about Moffat, because his insistence that everything should all tie up is like, yeah, but like, what if I don't like that one element that you're connecting it back to? Whatever.
Yeah, and all the 12 and Clara stans went berserk. So, I mean, I must admit, like, I did not like Clara in Matt Smith's time at all. I didn't like the whole impossible girl thing to begin with.
She's much better with Capaldi, I will concede that. So.
Yes, yeah, and I think, like you say about it trying to make us care, I'll be completely honest, like, during Capaldi's time, I did start to care for her as a character, because, as you say, I thought the dynamic was better. I thought the stories lent themselves more to 12 and Clara's relationship. I mean, I think Capaldi's brilliant no matter what script you give him. You could literally give him the worst script on earth and I think he'd still shine through it. And I mean, Series 8, you might have seen it on Twitter, but Series 8 is my favourite New Who season.
Interesting.
Yeah, for many reasons, really. I think part of it, I will admit, was a time of life thing, because when it aired, I was 18. I'd just gone off to university, and obviously, like, I'm sure if anyone listening knows, you know, it's quite a big moment in your life, you know. And I think I just appreciated the big shift in tone of Series 8 from Series 7, because as much as I love Matt Smith, I thought towards the end, for me at least, it was getting far too whimsical.
Yeah, I can
for my liking. So to shift to this Doctor who's like, no nonsense, he will insult you, he will say things that come across as a bit dickish, he will be a lot more grumpy and more abrasive, but at the end of the day still, you know, do what a doctor stands for, like, you know, save people. I just think I really appreciated that Moffat went that boldly initially with that shift. I think it got shifted too much the other way in Series 9. I think it could have been a slower mellow, if that makes sense, than it was.
It kind of shifts in the span of one episode.
Well, yeah, that's it. And I know some people say, oh yeah, but then when you watch 8, 9 and 10 together, it's a nice flow, and it is, but I don't know, I just would have, even if it was like the first half of Series 9 to work on mellowing from Series 8 Capaldi to, you know, the more mellow one we got in Series 10, I think I would have preferred that. But yeah, I just think all, like, the Series 8 stories are bangers, even the ones people don't like, I think In the Forest of the Night, it's probably the weakest story of the season, but I think it still has a lot of really positive moments, again, great character moments. I just love it, really.
I do appreciate Robot of Sherwood and Time Heist quite a bit. And, of course...
Oh, Time Heist is great. So much fun, Time Heist.
And Flatline and the other one, the Jamie Matheson.
The other one.
The one with the long-winded name.
Mummy on the Orient Express.
Yeah.
I love that. Imagine that in, like, a written review. Yeah, Flatline and, you know, the other one.
Because when Doctor Who stories just have, like, that middle monk episode in Series 10, and it just has that long, clunky title that I just can't be asked to say.
Oh, what is it?
The Pyramid at the End of the World. Just
that's the one, yeah.
Like, can't just have a short and snappy title, for goodness sake. But, yeah, I think my thing with Clara is... because I got off on the wrong foot with her in Series 7, because the Doctor pretty much treats her as his trophy to be won, in a sense, because, like, oh, you are the only mystery worth solving, and I'm going to creepily stalk you as a kid and stalk you as
which
an
again
adult.
Is kind of creepy, and the whole, we were saying, you know, Moffat saying sexy too often, there was a lot of that going on as well, like, because he sort of does the same thing to Amy in Series 5. Yeah,
in a sense. And yeah, like, it doesn't really feel like the show is self-aware of that this is creepy. It's just because, you know, the show's still glorifying the 11th Doctor, especially, like, with Ian, the Doctor, playing in the background, representing him as this, like, flawless, heroic stud. Like, no.
Yeah.
So we got off on the wrong foot with her, and then, like, Series 8, you know, new Doctor, I get that would be the point where, okay, it's a new Doctor, try and make me care about this companion. And then they just kind of argue all the time, and like there's not really enough levity for me to really like grow fond of their bond. Like, do you know what I mean?
That's fair. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There's so much like I get the point of their relationship is that they're a toxic relationship driving each other apart, but it gets to a point where there's so much toxicity that I'm not thinking, oh, I hope those crazy kids figure it out. I'm thinking, please just get away from each other.
Yeah, yeah. No, I see that completely. I think what I saw in it that, because as you say, yeah, they do argue a lot. It's like on the level of Six and Perry, but I think whereas with Six and Perry, a lot of that stuff on TV, literally, I would argue, has no point. You know, there's no purpose to that argument. It is argument for the sake of it. I would argue with 12 and Clara, it helps sort of showcase, especially in Series 8, why this new Doctor is so, you know, grumpy in the way he is. Because I thought, if you're a 2,000-year-old being and you've got humans, whether it's Clara or, you know, the humans around her, making, like, in your view, the same mistakes or the same comments, you know, the same judgments, I'd be like, of course you'd get sick of it. Of course you'd be like, nah, do you know what? Fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna... So, do you know what I mean? I think that's what I got from it. I was like, yeah, it makes sense as him as a character as a whole to show this side of him a bit. I'm not saying it should be like that all the time.
Yeah, and I honestly, I side more with him than Clara in Series 8, if I'm honest.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. Like, I do care for Clara more, but, like, I agree with you. I side more with Capaldi, because often he says the things that to Clara are, like, rude or hard-hitting, but the audience is like, yeah, do you know what? You've got a point. Like,
yeah.
But I think my favourite moment from that series is, you know, in Dark Water, the Keys scene with the fake volcano.
Fair enough.
Even though it's a hallucination, which I think undermines it a bit, I think you were going to say it's the acting for me in that one.
I love the acting's really great in that scene.
And again, it's like, you know, Clara's literally threatening him with the TARDIS keys destroying him, and he's not dropping that, you know, that stern guard sort of thing. I think that's what really solidified that approach for me. It was like, you know, even though I know the Doctor's in control and all that sort of stuff, it's like, to his supposed best friend in that situation, he will still, you know, be grumpy or show that side of him, if that makes sense.
I do wish he kept that demeanour, because then you cut to like 3-ish episodes later with the Magician's Apprentice, and then he's like on his knees begging Davros to not kill Clara. It's like, come on, that's such a shift. Yeah. And I think that sarcasm was so good in Series 8. No.
I know. I think that's what I mean though about it, you know, mellowing too quickly. It's too big of a shift too quick, and that's why it feels so disjointed in my opinion. But I mean, to kick off that series, Deep Breath I think is one of the best Doctor introductions ever, in my opinion.
Interesting. I can't really say I agree, mostly because
that's fair.
I can't remember, when did I last watch it? It was well over a year ago. Yeah, I think so. I think my favorite, I think The Woman Who Fell to Earth is honestly my favorite of the revival in terms of Doctor introductions.
No, that's cool.
Because Rose, I like Rose as well. It's some elements haven't aged well, like, you know, some of the CGI, but, you know, it's still functional and funny and nostalgic in a sense.
Or do you mean Mickey getting eaten by a fucking bin?
Yeah, that as well. What other story? Oh yeah, this is the Christmas Invasion, where the Doctor's asleep, like the 10th Doctor's asleep for all but 15 minutes, and that's certainly a direction to go in.
Yeah, it's a route. It's an idea. So.
And then the 11th Hour, it's alright, but it's overrated if I'm honest. And Deep Breath,
yes, absolutely overrated.
Deep Breath, I'm not really a fan, but I think The Woman Who Fell to Earth is really solid. Like, I have my issues with the Chibnall era, and I will like happily voice them, but I think that opening trilogy, Woman Who Fell to Earth, Ghost Monument, and Rosa are they're untouchable. They are great. And then Arachnids in the UK drops the ball.
With Donald Trump, Discount Donald Trump, who is returning, of course, everyone's favourite character, Discount Donald Trump.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will. But I realised we mentioned it earlier, and I just completely forgot.
Was it
Let's
Tom
talk
Baker?
about Tom Baker. Oh, you knew it as well. Let's talk about Tom Baker. So, I said it briefly. I'll give a brief thing. He is a good doctor. You know, he's iconic. He's funny. He's very alien. Arguably the most alien doctor we've ever had, because he's just bonkers, but in like the best way. There are some wonderful stories throughout his 7 years. But again, for me, I don't know what it is. It's just so much. And maybe it was like City of Death, where before I watched a lot of Baker's era, a lot of these stories were hyped to be like the best thing ever, and then I just didn't see it. But I just think his era is so overrated. So Tom Baker fans, I await your responses on Twitter. What are your thoughts on the Baker era?
You break my heart.
I'm sorry, Will. I'm sorry. I've got to do it. But
with season 8, you can have season 18, because I think that's overrated to hell. Like, ugh.
That's fair.
But the rest, I love Tom Baker's era.
Yeah. And
like, because I do think The Deadly Assassin is overrated. But other than that, I am pretty much a classic whore who agrees with pretty much all of the fan favorite stories. And Tom Baker,
that's fair.
Tom Baker is no real exception, because I love Brain of Morbius, I love Seeds of Doom, I love Horror Fang Rock, I love Robots of Death, Genesis of the Daleks as well.
That's fair.
But yeah, it's I see where you're coming from. Like, it just feels like there's just endless Tom Baker as far as the eye can see. But I don't know. It's comfy.
I think after a while, to some degree, obviously because he was in the part so long, and that's just that. But I think to some degree, as time goes on, stories get a bit. Even if they're trying new concepts, the structure feels very safe.
I can see that.
Ploddy, like season 17. I mean, I will admit, Destiny of the Daleks is a big guilty pleasure. Like, I have a lot of hidden love for Destiny of the Daleks purely for how cheap it is. But like Creature from the Pit, Nightmare from Eden, Horns of Nimon, like
they are daft. I can't think of any other words to describe them. They are very. They're very.
I don't know. It's just like, I mean, how about Underworld? What's so good about Underworld that I'm missing?
Oh, no one likes Underworld, but.
Oh, right, we can agree on that then.
Yeah, I think Underworld is like universally despised, even though I honestly think it's not that bad. But I get it. I get why it's like.
Doesn't it fall into that like group of stories where people say part 1's really good and then the rest is crap?
Yeah, some people say that. I'm fond of it. I give it like a free pass purely because Leela is my favourite companion of all time. So.
All right, fair enough. Yeah,
cool. That's interesting, isn't it? Because Troughton is my favourite Doctor.
I was gonna say,
Doctor.
I thought it would have been like Jamie or one of
then,
the.
Like Second Doctor's my favourite. Second Doctor's era is my favourite era, and a lot of my favourite stories are from Tom Baker. But then my favourite companion. Sorry, not Tom Baker. You know what I mean? I flubbed. But
yeah.
But then my favourite companion is from Tom Baker, and so is my favourite villain. Davros is my favourite villain. So, yeah, that's weird. I do love Jamie as well.
It's a fair mix.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Because I think Leela on TV didn't, in my opinion, as a companion, didn't necessarily get the best lot in life on TV.
She definitely got. I think just her and the Doctor. So, like, Face of Evil, Robots of Death, Talons, that's a hot button issue, but Horror Fang Rock, I think those are pretty stellar stories with, flaws notwithstanding. I think it's when they get K9, things kind of take a hit.
Yeah.
Because you have got Underworld, you have got Invasion of Time.
Oh, you see, I quite like Invasion of Time. I don't know
it's
what
it's a fun meme. Like, there are a few stories
yeah,
where I just call them There are some stories which are so like flawed, but I just give them the free pass because they're a fun meme, like Armageddon Factor, like the Time Monster, like the Underwater Menace.
No, that's fair. I bet, as you say, that I'm not really a fan of the Key to Time season. Sorry, Key to Time fans.
I like it.
No, that's fair. Like to yourself and anyone listening, if you love Key to Time, great. Like more power to you.
Granted,
I just think
I never used to like the power of Kroll that much, but when I last watched it with my boyfriend, he kind of pointed out to me that there are a bunch of half-naked men in this story, and I was like, oh yeah. And suddenly I liked it a lot more.
There's quite a few classic Who stories that have like an abundance of barely clad men, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, like The Face of Evil and The Power of Kroll are out here being like the skimpiest Tom Baker stories.
But also in like in the Dominators, back to that story, don't the Dulcians are wearing like mattresses and like
they're all
nothing
wearing
else.
like curtains on their chests, and it's weird.
Yeah, it's a bit yeah for such like a sensitive society. Classic Who wasn't afraid of showing a bit of skin, were they, from time to time?
We saw shirtless Ben Jackson in The Smugglers, and it's a shame that footage is missing.
If any clip could be recovered, can we please have the one clip of shirtless Ben Jackson, please? But there's a question for you. Out of all the remaining missing stories, if you could only pick one to be returned in full to the archives that's still missing, which would it be?
That is a good question, because at this point, purely for my sanity, I've kind of rewired my brain to accept the animations as pretty much recoveries at this point, because I know that's probably the best most of those stories are ever going to get. So part of me is stuck between choosing a story that hasn't been animated or choosing a story that has been animated but would probably look better just existing fully. Part of me wants to say Daleks Master Plan. Part of me wants to say Power of the Daleks. Part of me wants to say Fury from the Deep. I'm very split.
Yeah, that's fair. It is hard though, isn't it? If you were pitched with like you can only pick one. I think for me, aside from Daleks Master Plan, just for the scope of it, it'd have to be Evil of the Daleks for me.
That one as well. Because I just watched it today, and I still love it. But at the same time, if I could watch the bloody thing, that would be so much better.
I just think it's such a fascinating story, and I think you said it on Twitter. Like, it shows the Daleks at like the more manipulative side, and of course you got the Emperor Dalek and the whole Skaro Civil War stuff, and it's just. Like you say, it's one of those stories, like, you read about it and you're like, oh, God, like, I really want to watch this. You know what I mean? Like, you're just dying to watch it.
I miss that feeling.
Oh, mate. When I first got into Classic Who, back in 2005, I had a book called Monsters and Villains. Don't know if you remember it. It was just like it was like a mini encyclopedia to, like, the monsters in the show. But it covered, like, both Classic and New Who at that time. So, just Series 1. And all the Dalek stories, you know, you're reading about the ones in the 60s and you're like, oh man, like, I can't wait to get the DVD and watch this. And then a little 9-year-old me was like, what do you mean I can't watch Evil of the Daleks? What do you mean it doesn't exist?
So are you finished watching all of Classic Who then?
Yes, it was a very long journey. I started in 2005. It was a very brief history of my Doctor Who journey. So I'd never heard of it before the revival at all. I'd never seen a TARDIS, heard of it, never heard the Daleks. It was, you know, the trailer that You Want to Come With Me trailer of Christopher Eccleston. That came on, and my dad was with me, and he obviously remembered the show, and he said, oh, they're bringing that back. Oh, you'll like this. We should watch this. So we watched Rose, and I was like, yep, I like this show. And as soon as Series 1 finished and it turned into David Tennant, I was like, who on earth's this? And my dad was like, yeah, they've done this all the time. And that sort of spiraled off then. So my first Classic Who was The Three Doctors.
Ooh.
Which was, I love that story to pieces. I know people pick flaws. I know the Gelgards look a bit shit. But, like, who cares? It's like, I love it. And then, so from 2005 to 2014 it took me 9 years to watch all of Classic Who.
Ooh.
Yeah, and the last thing I watched, not counting the animations, was Invasion of Time, funnily enough.
Oh. So, like,
what a way to end.
So you watched the recons and stuff at the time, and then as the animations have come out, you've, like, rejuvenated your perspective on those stories. I see, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And, I mean, I'll be honest, and I know you love it, so apologies in advance, but I think Fury from the Deep works better as an audio than on visual.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there's just a lot of moments in the animation where I was watching it and I was like, I bet this would sound really cool if I was like listening with my headphones on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like,
I can see.
Yeah.
That. Because I asked that because so many people who I who I talk to on the Doctor Who Twitter sphere are still going through Classic Who, and whenever I bring up a certain story, they're like, "Oh, I haven't seen that yet," and I'm just like, "Aw, I wish that were me."
I mean, if I got to do it all over again, I'd love to do it, like re-experience all those stories for like the first time again, like watching Twin Dilemma and thinking, "Oh, this really isn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be," something like that.
Yeah. If I could give my brief history.
No, go ahead, please.
I started in a sort of 2006-ish time.
Okay. Yeah.
The first time I ever saw Doctor Who, it wasn't the thing that got me hooked, but it was the first time I ever saw anything to do with it. I was in the living room, like, playing with Thomas Tank Engine trains, I think. I was a kid.
Hell yeah, boy.
And
hell yeah. Thomas repping out there. Let's go, boys. So...
I don't know if it was the episode itself or like another program showing clips like from the episode, but it was two scenes from Rise of the Cybermen playing on TV. It was first the earpods scene, like when everyone stopped in the street, and then like the Doctor and Rose are like walking between them, and then Ten sticking his face in someone's ear going, "It's the earpieces. Cybus Industries like downloaded into their heads. Oh, that's good." Like
that was brilliant. Big Finish, hire this man. Like, give Jacob Dudman a break.
Oh, that is clever. Oh.
It really like reminds me that David Tennant in some scenes sounds like a lusty pirate, if anything.
But yeah, it was that scene and the cliffhanger scene where they're all surrounded and like the Cybermen like, "We will delete you," and then they just awkwardly stand there while going, "Delete."
Yeah, like only some of them move forward, but the one who's talking to them just sticks his hand out and doesn't do anything.
Like, okay, you're gonna do that thing that you said you were gonna do. Yeah. So that wasn't the thing that got me hooked, but it was the first thing I remember. I was like, oh, that's something, I guess. Then I visited like my cousin's family, and it wasn't at the time. It was like it must have been at least a year after the episode aired. But my cousin showed me Rose over like an Indian takeaway or something. And that was what got me hooked, because I specifically remember Mickey being vored by a bin, and I was like, wow, that's something.
This is my kind of show.
And from then on, like, I got hooked on a few other episodes of Series 1 and 2. I never saw them in full at the time, because there were some which I'd heard were really scary in reputation, like The Empty Child, and even New Earth, funnily enough, because there were zombies in that, sort of, and I was like, too scary. And Series 3 was the first series I watched as it came out, like on broadcast, and I watched pretty much all of that as it came out, except for the Shakespeare Code, because of that stupid, "Oh no, I heard witches are in it, that's scary" rule.
Oh, bless you, man.
And yet, weirdly enough, I was allowed to watch Blink on broadcast.
Or even like 42. I think that has some pretty horrific moments when you think about it, like people being burned alive and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And then at some point around that time, my dad still does. He sells like secondhand home media. He's shifted more towards DVDs nowadays, but at the time it was VHS tapes still for some reason, even though they were going out of fashion. But we had a VHS player, and Dad just gave me Resurrection of the Daleks on VHS. And
Hey.
that was my first Classic Who story. And I think at that point I knew what regeneration was, Daleks.
Yeah.
And I didn't really care about, shittier budget or whatever. I was like, cool, this is Doctor Who. I'll watch more of it. And that really solidified my fandom because later that year, Time Crash happened and Peter Davison was in it. I was like,
Oh yeah,
I know
shit,
him.
Yeah. I know what that is. Yeah.
And then the next year with
No,
Series
that's-
4, Davros comes in. I'm like, I know him as well.
So it all like perfectly lined up for you then, in a way, like the whole classic and new Who connection, I guess.
Yeah. And at the time, Peter Davison was my favourite Doctor purely because of that connection. And I'd seen like a few other stories of him, like the Five Doctors and Earthshock as well. And I was like, wow, I sure hope he's this awesome in all of his stories. And then come to find out he's not really. So
We all need to give some Five some love. It's funny, like the day we're recording this, I've listened to the 2 Shadow of the Daleks Big Finish releases they did recently.
Yeah.
And I think they're great. I think they really show off Five in like a really good light. So I'd recommend them. But I'm so glad that you said like watching Resurrection, you just enjoyed it. You weren't bothered about budgets or anything like that. And I think that's the best time to get into Classic Who, when you're a kid. Because as a kid, you're not really thinking about, the budget and blah, 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 blah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas adults now are like, oh yeah, they didn't have a budget for that. That affects shit. I think that's what makes it hard. Do you think? Like, I think it's harder to get into Classic Who as an adult than as a kid in many ways.
I can see that, yeah. I had a few other stories.
Don't think it's impossible, but
yeah, because I had a few other stories around that time as well, like Tomb of the Cybermen and I think Robots of Death as well. I never finished watching it at the time because again I found that too scary. What you said about like getting people into Classic Who. Funnily enough, there's only one other person I've ever been able to really get into Classic Who, and it's my boyfriend who's sitting like on across from me right now, like playing a game. Because he's
amen, brother.
Yeah, and he's I showed him because before he met me, he hated Doctor Who, like not really.
And you were like, oh, this is gonna go really well.
Yeah, like we got together, like we started out more like a friends with benefits kind of thing, and then we like kind of got feelings for each other. Then we're like, okay, we're together, and then I'm like, but I like Doctor Who. And it was cool because he likes Game of Thrones and he got me into Game of Thrones, so I was like, okay, that's cool, we might as well do it my way as well. So I showed him Doctor Who, and it was like classic and new Who. Like he didn't like either of them at the time, not like intelligently so, but like purely based on its reputation. Like he'd seen bits and not been a fan, but he was annoyed like at the fandom's like, how intense Doctor Who fandom can be, like...
That's one word for it, yeah.
And particularly at the time, like the Tumblr age of wibbly wobbly, memes.
Oh, God.
Are you my mummy? He especially hates that because...
Oh, God.
Apparently that was everywhere in 2005, and he was like, shut up. So I like showed him some episodes, and... he had this preconceived like idea of what Doctor Who was, like his vision, which basically embodied everything he thought he hated about it, like bad acting, bad writing, like time travel plots that make no sense kind of thing. And then I showed him like a story from each Doctor. I showed him another story from each Doctor, and I ended up showing him the entire show, and now we're watching it together again, like in chronological order this time. And it turns out that his criticisms, his like preconceived like idea, unflattering idea of what Doctor Who is and how bad it is, only really applies to Matt Smith.
And now all the Stephen Moffat fans listening are gonna swarm you even more.
And he's basically, because people think I'm harsh on the 11th Doctor, they should be glad that he's not as vocal about him as I am, because he hates the 11th Doctor even more than I do.
I mean, again, like, I don't... the 11th Doctor has his moments for me, but I think, like I said, it was sort of all the way through. Like, I always describe Matt Smith's era as like the fairy tale era, because that's when the show, I think, felt like its most fairy tale.
Yeah, and there is like an appeal to that. There are times where I do like Matt Smith's Doctor, more so earlier on. But later on, he does become this overly stylish, quote-unquote, stud, who, like, everyone... or apparently a stud, because everyone fawns over him, even though he has, like, no sexual chemistry at all. Like, I don't get it. Oh, it's weird.
Is it fair to say Matt Smith is the Tumblr Doctor?
Yeah, that's a good description. But yeah, he was pleasantly surprised by my boyfriend. That is he, not Matt Smith. He was quite pleasantly surprised by a lot of Doctor Who. He is particularly fond of Tom Baker. He can get down with Pertwee and Troughton, and the sort of he's a massive fan of Catherine Tate, so Donna was what I eased him into the show with. And he begrudgingly has to admit he's a fan. Because
bless.
So he's the one person I've managed to turn into a fan of Doctor Who, and especially Classic Who, because other people I've tried and they've just been like, ha, bad effects, no thank you.
Well, I congratulate you. You've achieved where many of us have failed. So no, that's brilliant though. I'm glad though, because it also means you've got, as you say, you've got someone to share it all with, which I think is lovely. That you can have that experience.
And I have, I get to share it with, Twitter as well. It's all like one big Who family, which is a big change from 4 years ago when I felt kind of isolated. Like, because around like Tennant era, very early Matt Smith era, it would be that thing that, like, it was my interest, but my family would indulge in it with me. Like, we'd all sit down in front of the telly and watch The Next Doctor or the Sontaran Stratagem, or they would we'd sit down to watch Let's Kill Hitler, and they'd be constantly asking me, Will, do you understand what's going on during this? Because I don't get it, because at that point the Doctor Who had gained a reputation of being too confusing for the family audience.
Yeah, thanks Series 6.
Yeah. But then after that point, it started to become my interest that I'd watch alone in my bedroom or like on my computer or whatever. So I was like, kind of like a you know what I mean, like a solo interest, not really like I could bond with anyone over it. But I'm starting to get that back again nowadays, and that's quite lovely.
No, it's good. I mean, I've discovered over the last year or so how wonderful the whole, as you say, like through Twitter and stuff, how wonderful the Who community can be, shall we say, and how how people like yourself are so easily willing to collaborate on projects like this. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people who I've collaborated with who you don't think could have an ego, but you look at their size and think, oh, they don't want to collaborate with me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not on their level. But people are just like, yeah, let's talk Doctor Who, let's do it. Because I think if we all, a lot of us love it in the way like me and you do, and I think that's just really nice that we can just like jump on a podcast and just like wax lyrical about it. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's brilliant.
Because I've always been wanting to do something like this. Like, even as a kid, I always wanted to kind of be kind of a Doctor Who opinion / YouTuber thing in a way. Pardon me. Oops, sorry, twatted the microphone. And I kind of just didn't really have the confidence to do it. Plus, I was distracted with other things. Like, I make animations and cartoons, most of which aren't really Doctor Who related. But this year, sort of, I just decided, you know what? Let's just finally fulfill that old dream of mine. Since I've become sort of known for it on Twitter, let's make Doctor Who opinion think pieces, and let's collaborate with other people on it. So that's my new thing now, and this is currently the 4th podcast I've done, and you're the second person I've collaborated with, because the other 3 podcasts I've done are all with the same person.
All right, no, that's fair. Like, no, I hope you've, again, thanks for coming, and I hope you've been enjoying it, even though it's just I know we're just casually waxing lyrical, moving from topic to topic, but I think I always prefer that style of conversation, letting it just be two people talk, I guess, rather than have like rigid structures. I think there's an advantage to it as well, but basically, my mum was like, you talk for England, so you just rabble, and I was like, yes, I will make that a podcast. So,
is that a challenge?
Is that a challenge? I think, well, if we did this like all the time, we could just wax lyrical probably for like hours on end with the way we've been going. Like it's been fab. I guess the only like other main thing I wanted to like touch on with you is, as you say, you've sort of carved out this, the following on Twitter, which is great. I will of the Maddox, go and follow him. Yeah, your boy Maddox. Yeah. Obviously, like you share your opinions and stuff, which are all valid. Have you? Well, I think I know the answer because I think I've seen it. But have you encountered a side of the fandom that isn't? I don't know. Gotta be careful with my words here. Isn't like, so like how say you have an opinion and I can disagree with you, but I'm not like hating on you as a person for it. I'm just like, I don't agree.
Who aren't welcoming to me, if you mean.
Yeah, people who sort of come after you personally just for what you think about Doctor Who, so to speak.
That's a difficult question, because I kind of fluctuate, because there are some times where because I do try and make it so that, flippant memery is my shtick, but there are some times where I just become more heated and sincere and more argumentative, and, I have pissed off a few people in that regard. There are a few people who I've made enemies. Like, I don't tend to I always like try to find common ground with people, or if I don't, I don't like I'm very, very, very generous with my blocking, in a sense. I try not to block people on Twitter because I just feel like that's not really fair, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But there are occasions where I've just had to do that. And it's less because of Doctor Who and more because of like personal drama that's like built up outside of that. But there are occasions where some people just come across as too like cocky or like too condescending for their own good. Like there are some people. There's one particular person I'm thinking of who I don't have them blocked anymore, but I did have them blocked for a time, where I would give an opinion and they would always just be like, they would condescendingly mock the opinion without like not being constructive with it. They would just like quote
with there being no criticism whatsoever.
Yeah, like for instance, I think in The Magician's Apprentice, when they have like those old style Dalek cities, like it's sort of resembling the 60s Who set design. I honestly think that looks kind of crap, because I think it looks great in 60s Who when it's like low budget, it's camera quality's like standard definition and it's all grainy. I think it works well there. That actually looks cool. But when you try replicating like 60s set design and budgetary constraints in like this current high definition, high budget format, it just looks kind of cheap and crap. It doesn't really look like it's trying to like it doesn't look right, if you know what I mean. And I was of the opinion that I preferred what the Rusty Davies era did, like with their weird over elaborate Dalek spaceships. And someone came in my mentions being all cocky, like, those fake looking pieces of plastic look so much better than that sleek 60s homage. Oh wait, no they don't. It's like, you could like talk to me properly and not be a cocky bitch. But
no, I hear you. I mean, there are some again, I'm not going to mention any names, but there are some people that I've encountered as well who are quite frankly just cowards. Like, I got tagged in a very long thread of multiple people some time ago, and it came in my mentions, and like you see the notification of who it is, and I was like, oh, this will be interesting, because bear in mind, I'd never spoken with this person, I'd never replied on Twitter comments, I'd never messaged them, nothing, but I knew them through reputation or whatever, so I'm like, I wonder why they've tagged me. And then I open my phone, I like click on the notification, and it says, you're not allowed to view this tweet because you've been blocked by the user. And I'm like, right, so you've tagged me in a thread and you've blocked me. I was like, okay. So I don't even get a chance to respond. Like, it's just, like, yeah, it's just, we could go on forever about it. But yeah, there are, like in any fandom, there's just some really shitty corners, to be frank, isn't there? Like, it's part and parcel, I think.
There have been some occasions where I've been able to salvage it, though. Like, there are a few people who, because I don't like Series 9, I have previously been extremely vocal about my dislike of Series 9, but there are other people who adore Series 9 and think it's their favourite. And there are times in the past where I've had kind of heated debates with some people that seem kind of smug and not very pleasant. But because I've then just decided to take a step back from that and mellow out a bit, those people have softened to me and I've softened to them, and now we're mutuals and stuff. And, you know, we kind of respect each other's perspectives.
But that's what it should be, really, isn't it? I think, like, you can disagree on anything, but as long as you're like, well, at the end of the day, as long as you're like, well, that's your opinion and that's my opinion and no one's quote-unquote right or wrong, I think that's where, like, the one, I saw one the other day, it wasn't targeted at me, but I just saw it where I think someone had left a comment saying how when everything changed to from Peter Capaldi to Jodie, they were at first, you know, worried about all the big changes that were going to happen to the show. But then they said, oh, but when I saw it, you know, my worries completely subsided. You know, I love what Jodie and Chibnall are doing. And one comment got highlighted by this person saying, oh, well, this person, implying the person who wrote the initial tweet, this person's clearly autistic, but you keep doing you, pal. And I was like, whoa. I was like, that.
Yeah, that's uncalled for.
I was like, one, that's a massive presumption. Two, that's just a fucking awful thing to comment. Like, and then obviously people are saying that to him, and he's like, no, you're taking it in the wrong way. I didn't mean it like that. And it's like, well,
yeah,
maybe don't write it at all. But I mean, don't word it like that.
Yeah, like what other way is that to be taken as?
Exactly. And then, I mean, when you dig into it, they've said like shit like that before, and it's just that side of the fandom that I think turns me off from being as active on social media about Doctor Who sometimes. Like, most of the time I love it, like, you know, whether it's like chatting with you or other members of the community where we're either like memeing or debating, all that sort of stuff. But then you have those, like, you know, odd interactions where you just think, I can't be arsed with this shit. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this doesn't make me want to talk about my favourite show on Twitter anymore, which is like, no one should, I don't know, I don't think anyone should be made to feel like they can't share their opinion, but I just think people need to do it in a way that's not, just don't be a bitch.
Yeah.
Just don't be a horrible piece of shit about it. Like,
and of course, there's the not my doctor side of it as well, which I mostly stay away from them. But there are times where I just like to poke the wasp's nest and be like, y'all are
Team
silly.
NMD. Yeah. Well, my thing is, like, you know, because they all kicked off at like the whole timeless children thing. I sort of think, have none of you like sat down and thought, gee, maybe this will be elaborated, corrected, retcon, whatever you want to use. You know, have you ever thought this might be corrected in Series 13 and that it's just, you know, a big cliffhanger? I'm not saying that's what is going to happen, but do you know what I mean? It's like, have we not considered this as an option?
This has ruined Doctor Who forever and ever.
Oh, don't. Please don't.
They said the exact same thing about the TV movie, and now look at it. Now the TV movie is pretty much worshipped by everyone. Like, ironically.
I love that.
But, you know.
Doctor Who is dead. Doctor Who has been dead since 2017.
Doctor Who is extra dead now. Like, every new death, it dies a little bit more. Like it.
Do you know what though? It's the ones who are also content creators on YouTube, and there is video proof of them like 8 months ago after the Timeless Children saying, "I will not cover Doctor Who again on this channel. I am done with this show. I'm not going to talk about it again." And then look, 5 months later, isn't the New Year's special going to be awful? It's like, thought you weren't talking about this shit again, bruh. Like,
yeah, like,
yeah, just there. Again, we could delve in it all day, but I think my closing statement on that whole side of it is just like the hypocrisy often they come out with is unreal. Like, it really is laughable.
That's very true.
Yeah. Oh, that felt good. Got that on my system. So, but yeah, I think we'll probably start to wrap it up. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good closing way.
Yeah.
So
it's probably for the best. Otherwise, this could go on for like 4 hours because that's what the other streams I did. Because I won't say who they are. They might want to keep it a surprise.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
They were like, sure, this collab will hopefully only take 7 minutes. Not 7 minutes, 70 minutes. And then it ended up going on for 3 hours.
Oh, I love streams like that, though. Especially if you're just enjoying it. Like, if I didn't have, like, what feels like a bajillion other bits of shit to do, I'd happily just stay and wax lyrical. But, alas, life gets in the way.
I will happily return for a sequel stream, though, if I am wanted.
Absolutely. I'm thinking, like, next year I'm hoping to do, well, more Doctor Who videos for a start, because for those who watch my channel, Doctor Who isn't the only thing I do. But the more Doctor Who videos I want to make, I do want to make them more, like, collaborative in nature. So, yeah, I'll definitely hit you up if I've got a piece in mind. If I do a bit about the Troughton era, you'll be my first port of call. So...
yes, please.
Or if I do a video on Series 9, I can have a proper back and forth about that.
Oh, God, yeah.
But in hindsight, Will, thank you so much, mate, for coming on board. And as you mentioned at the start, guys, go and check out Will on Twitter at your boy Maddox. Check him out on YouTube at Maddox Productions. And, are there any closing things you want to say, Will?
Thank you for having me.
No problem, man.
Honey, sugar, babe, sweetheart. That bit from Rose, sugar, honey, babe, sweetheart.
Oh, God, that's just... I don't have words for that segment. It's just unnecessarily weird. It's just, but yeah, babe, sugar. Oh, babe, yeah, sugar. But nah, honestly,
the Autons canonically said babe.
Yeah, it's just, we need it back. I want more random Auton. Like, if Rory had said that when he got turned into an Auton, that would have been perfection. But
yes, please.
Alas. Thanks, Moffat. You let us down once again. No, I'm joking. It's fine. But Will, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully you'll be back on the channel sometime soon.
Yeah, I've really liked this. It's been chill and nice to just chat random crap.
And that's what this show's all about, people, if you hadn't guessed by this point. So, thanks again, mate. And to all of you listening, thank you very much for tuning in. You can check us out here on YouTube, or we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all of the podcast sites, really. So do check us out there, and Season 1 as well. And sometime soon, Season 2 will be kicking off, so come back for that. But in the meantime, I shall see you in the next episode.
Toodle pip, humble viewers.
Well, that brings us to the end of our Christmas Eve broadcasting here on AMTV. Have a good night's rest, and I hope you enjoy the festivities that come tomorrow on Christmas Day. Good night.